In 1954, a Tennessee farmer killed the biggest buck of his life with a rope, a bottle of doe scent, and a whittled stick. No trail camera, no scent blocking suit, no $400 rangefinder, just tricks his father handed down to him. Today, hunters drop $1,000 before they ever step into the woods. But number 14 on this list still outshoots the gadget that replaced it. And number 3 was so deadly that several states eventually wrote laws to control it. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down 20 poor man deer hunting tricks our grandfathers swore by before the gear companies took over. Number 20, cover scent from the land itself. Long before scent lock suits and $30 spray bottles of earth scent, your grandfather knew the woods already carried everything he needed. He would crush a handful of cedar boughs between his palms and rub the oil into his coat and cap. He would drag his boots through fresh dirt, roll his gloves in crushed oak leaves, and if a buck had been rubbing a nearby sapling, he would rub against it too. Some men stood in the smoke of the morning campfire on purpose, letting the wood smoke soak into the wool because deer are used to the smell of a distant fire and pay it no mind. It cost nothing. The theory was simple and it was correct. You cannot beat a whitetail's nose with chemistry, but you can hide your own scent underneath the smell of the ground he walks on every day. A bottle of synthetic cover scent runs $8 now, and half of it evaporates before noon. A handful of cedar was free, and it lasted as long as the hunt did. Number 19, the homemade wooden stand. Before aluminum climbers and $250 hang-ons, a deer stand was something you built with a hammer, a pocket full of nails, and a Saturday afternoon. Your grandfather would find a fork in a big white oak on the edge of a bean field, haul up a few 2x4s and a scrap of plywood, and nail together a platform he would sit in for the next 20 years. Some families had stands that outlived the men who built them, gray and weathered, still holding a grandson every November. The wood cost a couple of dollars from the mill, or nothing at all if it came from a torn-down barn. The genius was permanence. That stand became part of the tree, part of the land, and the deer grew so used to seeing it that they walked right under it without a second look. We spend hundreds now on stands we move every season, spooking deer each time we hang one. Grandpa picked the right tree once and never had to think about it again. Number 18, the salt and mineral lick. For the price of a 50-pound block of stock salt meant for cattle, about $1 in 1958, your grandfather could turn a quiet corner of the woods into a place deer visited every single day. He would set that white block on a stump near a creek crossing or bust it up and pour it into a hollowed spot in the dirt, then let the rain do the rest. Deer crave the sodium and minerals, especially in spring and summer when they are growing antlers and nursing fawns. Within a couple of weeks, the ground around it was pounded flat with tracks. He was not just feeding deer, he was learning them, watching which trails they used to come and go, figuring out where they bedded and where they fed. That same knowledge sells today in bags marked Trophy Mineral for $20 a piece with a picture of a giant buck on the front. It is the same salt. Deer never learned to read the label. Number 17, the apple tree ambush. Every old farm had a few gnarled apple trees gone half wild at the edge of a pasture, and your grandfather knew those trees were better than any bait pile a man could buy. Come October, the apples dropped soft and sweet into the grass, and the deer came for them like clockwork, usually in the last hour of light. He did not need a feeder, he did not need corn. He just needed to know which trees were dropping that year, because a good apple tree bears heavy one season and light the next. So he watched all summer, and when the drop started, he moved in downwind and waited. The smell of fermenting apples in the cool evening air, the soft thump of one falling, the crunch of a deer working through the windfalls in the dark. Those trees pulled deer for generations. Some of them are still standing today on land where the farmhouse burned down 40 years ago, and the deer still come. Number 16, reading the white oak. Here's a piece of knowledge that vanished almost completely. Your grandfather could walk into a hardwood ridge in early fall, look up, and tell you exactly where the deer would be feeding that week because he knew his oaks. White oak acorns are sweet and low in tannin, and deer will walk past a dozen red oaks to get to a single dropping white oak. Red oak acorns are bitter, a last resort, eaten only when the sweet ones are gone. He knew that white oaks do not produce every year, that a heavy mast year meant deer scattered across the whole ridge, and a poor year meant they all funneled onto the 2 or 3 trees still bearing. He would crack an acorn with his thumbnail to taste it, kick through the leaves to see which caps had been chewed. No app, no feed chart, no consultant, just a man who had spent 50 autumns learning which trees fed the deer. That knowledge was worth more than any trail camera, and it cost nothing but attention. Number 15, the corn pile, where the law allowed. In the days and the places where baiting was legal, and across much of the country in the mid-century, it simply was, a bag of shelled corn was the poor man's food plot. Your grandfather would carry a 50-pound sack, about $1.50 from the co-op, out to a shaded draw and pour it in a low spot where the deer felt safe. He would freshen it every few days and hunt the wind coming off it. It was not glamorous and it was not complicated. It worked because deer are creatures of pattern, and a reliable meal in a quiet place will draw them in the same window every evening. Today, the same idea sells as gravity feeders and automatic timed spinners running $200 and $300, plus the corn to fill them. Grandpa's version was a paper sack and a strong back. Know your local laws before you ever try it now, because much of what was common then is regulated hard today. But understand, this was where the modern feeder was born. Number 14, hunting the wind. Here is the trick that still beats the gadget that replaced it. Every $300 scent control suit ever sold exists to solve one problem: a deer's nose. Your grandfather solved that problem for free, and he solved it better. He hunted the wind. Before he ever picked a stand, he wet a finger and held it up, or he pulled a pinch of milkweed down and watched which way the fluff drifted, or he carried a small bottle of talc and puffed it into the air. He set up so the wind was always blowing from the deer to him, never the other way, and he simply refused to hunt a stand when the wind was wrong, no matter how good the spot was. A whitetail can smell a man 200 yards off. No suit, no spray, no carbon lining changes that. But wind blowing the right direction beats a deer's nose every time it matters. Scientists who study whitetail behavior confirm what he knew by instinct. Scent is the single sense a mature buck trusts most, and the only reliable way to defeat it is to stay downwind. The multi-billion-dollar scent control industry is built on convincing you that you can buy your way around a rule the wind already solved for nothing. First pattern break. Here is where this gets honest. The tricks on this list are not just cheaper than the gear that replaced them. In most cases, they are better, and the reason cuts deeper than money. Your grandfather could not buy his way to a deer. He had no choice but to learn the animal, the land, the wind, and the season until the knowledge lived in his hands. The gear economy sold us a lie in the other direction. It told us that a better rangefinder or a scent machine or a cellular trail camera could replace the years of watching, and it cannot. A man who understands the wind will kill more deer with open sights than a man who understands nothing will kill with $5,000 of equipment. The stuff in the catalog is designed to make you feel prepared while you are standing in the wrong place at the wrong time in the wrong wind. Grandpa was not richer than we are. He was poorer, which is exactly why he had to become good. Skill was the only gear he could afford, and it turned out skill was the only gear that ever really mattered. Number 13, the homemade grunt call. Long before plastic grunt tubes hung on every hunter's chest at $40 a piece, your grandfather made deer talk with what he had. Some men whittled a call from a section of cane or a hollowed elderberry stem with a rubber band stretched over a notch for the reed. Others used a section of garden hose and a duck call reed. A few could grunt convincingly through their own cupped hands. He knew a buck's grunt was a low, guttural tick, 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 the sound of a rutting deer working through the timber, and that a curious buck would swing in close just to see who else was in his woods. The homemade calls had a rougher, more natural rasp than the mass-produced ones, closer to the real animal. He did not overcall the way beginners do today, blasting away every 10 minutes. He gave 2 or 3 soft grunts and then went dead silent and let the buck's own curiosity do the rest. That patience, more than the tool, was the real trick. Number 12, rattling with real antlers. There is nothing on a store shelf that beats a pair of real shed antlers banged together by a man who knows what he is doing. During the rut, when bucks are fighting over does, your grandfather would take 2 sheds he found while walking the fields in spring, tie them to his belt, and rattle them together in a stand of thick timber. The sharp crack and grind of bone on bone, the rustle of raking them through brush, sounds exactly like 2 bucks locked up in a fight, and a dominant buck will come looking to run off the competition or steal the doe. He would rattle hard for 30 seconds, then hang the antlers up and grip his rifle, because the buck that answers often comes in fast and silent and low. Modern hunters buy rattle bags and synthetic antlers for $30, and they work, but nothing rings true like the real thing. And the sheds were free, picked up on a March walk when the snow melted, a chore that doubled as scouting for next season. Number 11, the mock scrape. Your grandfather understood that a buck leaves his calling card on the ground and that a man could forge one. A scrape is a patch of bare dirt. A buck paws out under a low, overhanging branch, marking it with scent from the glands on his head and hooves, a signpost he checks again and again through the rut. So Grandpa made his own. He would find the right licking branch about waist high over a trail, clear a circle of leaves down to fresh dirt with the heel of his boot, and if he had a little doe scent, he would freshen it. Curious bucks could not resist checking the new sign, and once they started using it, he knew right where they would be. It cost nothing but 10 minutes and a boot heel. Today, whole product lines of scrape drippers and scent bombs and time dispensers sell the same idea for $100 and up. The buck does not know the difference between a factory scent and a scuffed patch of honest dirt under the right branch. Location was always the trick, not the chemistry. Number 10, reading trails, funnels, and pinch points. Here is the skill that separated the men who filled the freezer from the men who just sat in the woods. Your grandfather could read the land like a page. He knew deer are lazy travelers who take the path of least resistance, and that certain features on the ground force them to move through narrow places. A saddle low in a ridgeline, a strip of brush connecting 2 woodlots across an open field, the inside bend of a creek, a gap in an old fence line. He learned to find these pinch points and set up on them, because a deer moving from bedding to feeding had to squeeze through, and a hunter waiting there did not have to chase anything. He read the trails too, the deep worn ruts versus the faint ones, which were used at dawn and which at dusk. This was free, and it was everything. Every dollar of gear in the world is wasted if you sit where the deer are not. Grandpa never wasted a sit because he knew where they had to be before he ever climbed the tree. Number 9, the drag rag. This one is pure country genius. During the rut, your grandfather would tie an old cloth or a strip of wool to the end of a string, soak it in doe scent, and drag it behind his boots on the long walk to his stand. He laid a scent trail straight to where he was sitting. A buck cruising for does would cross that line, put his nose down, and follow it right into range, thinking he was trailing a hot doe. Then Grandpa would hang the rag on a branch upwind so the scent kept working while he waited. The whole rig cost a rag and a bottle of scent, and the scent itself often came free from a doe taken earlier in the season, the glands saved and steeped in a mason jar in the shed. It turned the buck's greatest strength, that incredible nose, into the very thing that killed him. Modern hunters buy scent wicks and dispenser systems, but it is the same trick your grandfather ran with a torn shirt tail and a piece of twine. Second pattern break. Here is what the industry does not advertise. Nearly every high-dollar product in the hunting catalog is a repackaged grandfather trick with a markup. The scent suit is hunting the wind, sold back to you as fabric. The mineral bag is a salt block with a logo. The scrape dripper is a boot heel in a bottle. The rattle bag is 2 antlers you could find on a spring walk. The feeder is a paper sack of corn. The gear companies did not invent these ideas. They took the free knowledge that lived in working men's hands and wrapped it in plastic and a price tag. And they spent millions in ads convincing us that our grandfathers were primitive and we are advancedest. The truth is closer to the opposite. He knew why every trick worked, so he could adapt it to any woods on any day. We know only which product to buy, so we are helpless the moment the woods do not match the commercial. He owned the knowledge. We only rent the gear, and the gear stops working the second the batteries die. Number 8, still hunting on foot. Before every hunter owned 3 stands and a climbing harness, the oldest way to kill a deer was to go and find him. Still hunting means moving through the woods so slowly and so quietly that you see the deer before he sees you. Your grandfather would take a single step, stop and look for a full minute, then another step. He moved into the wind, walked the shadowed side of ridges, and put his feet down soft on the wet leaves after rain when the woods were silent. It could take him 2 hours to cover 400 yards. He was reading everything, a flick of an ear, the horizontal line of a back that did not belong among the vertical trees, the black nose of a bedded buck. This took no money and immense discipline, and it made him a hunter in the truest sense, rather than a man sitting in a box waiting. Most hunters today have never done it, because sitting is easier and the gear pushes you toward stands. But a patient man on foot in the right woods is the deadliest thing in the forest. Number 7, 1 rifle and open sights. Your grandfather did not own a safe full of guns. He owned 1 deer rifle, often a lever-action 30-30 or an old bolt gun handed down from his own father, and he knew it the way he knew his own hands. It wore open iron sights, no scope because a scope cost more than he could spare, and fogged in the cold and rain besides. He sighted it in once, learned exactly where it hit at 50 and 100 yards, and he practiced until the front bead found the deer's shoulder without conscious thought. Most of his shots were close, inside 100 yards, in the thick timber where deer actually live, and open sights are lightning fast up close. He did not need to range a deer or dial a turret. He raised the rifle, put the bead behind the shoulder, and squeezed. 1 shot usually, because ammunition cost money, and a good hunter did not spray the woods. We chase $2,000 optics and long-range setups now for shots most of us will never take. He killed a lifetime of deer with iron sights and 1 box of shells a year. Number 6, using the whole deer. To your grandfather, a deer was not a trophy on the wall. It was meat on the table through a long winter, and wasting any of it was close to a sin. He field dressed the animal within minutes of the shot, right there in the woods, to cool the meat and preserve it, a skill every boy learned by 12. Nothing went to the buzzards that could feed the family. The backstraps and hams, of course, but also the liver and heart fried up that very night, the neck and shoulders ground for burger or simmered low into stew, the bones boiled down for broth, the fat and scraps saved. A single deer could carry a family through months, and the money it saved on beef was the whole reason many families hunted at all. He did not pay a processor $80 to cut it up. He did it himself at the kitchen table with a good knife and the knowledge his father gave him. The hunt did not end at the shot. It ended when the last of the deer was put up for winter, and every part of it mattered. Number 5, tracking a blood trail. A shot deer rarely drops on the spot, and your grandfather's most important skill often began after he pulled the trigger. He could read blood on the ground like a story. Bright pink, frothy blood meant a lung hit and a deer that would not go far. Dark red meant liver, a deer that needed time before you pushed it. He knew to mark the exact spot the deer stood, to find the first drop, and to move slow, marking each sign with a strip of toilet paper or a bent twig so he could look back and see the line of travel. He read the scuffed leaves, the hair, the direction of the splatter that told him how fast the deer was moving. On a hard trail, he would get down on his hands and knees. He knew that pushing a wounded deer too soon meant losing it, and that patience recovered animals other men gave up on. This cost nothing, and it was a matter of honor. A hunter who could not track had no business taking the shot, because a deer that ran off and died uneaten was the worst waste of all. Number 4, hunting the rut by the calendar in the cold. Your grandfather did not need a moon phase app or a solunar chart or a subscription to a hunting service. He knew that once a year, usually in the second week of November across most of the country, the woods came alive. The rut, when bucks abandoned their caution and chased does through the daylight hours, was the one time even the biggest, oldest buck made a fatal mistake. He watched for the signs the deer themselves gave him, fresh scrapes appearing overnight, rubs torn into cedar trunks, does running with bucks, hard on their heels. And he knew the weather mattered more than any chart. A hard, cold front dropping the temperature 20 degrees would put deer on their feet in the middle of the day. So he took his vacation days for that one magic window, sat all day when he could, and let the biology work for him. It cost him nothing but timing and the willingness to sit in the cold. The gear industry sells prediction now for real money. He got the same forecast for free by reading the woods and watching the thermometer on the barn. Third pattern break. Here is the part nobody wants to say out loud. We did not gain much when we traded these tricks for gear, but we lost something enormous. We lost the reason to learn. A boy who follows his grandfather still hunting through the timber, who learns to read a blood trail on his knees, who tastes an acorn to know his oaks, becomes something. He becomes a woodsman, connected to the land and the season and the animal in a way no catalog can sell. A boy handed a cellular trail camera and a scent suit and told to sit in a box learns to consume, not to hunt. The knowledge our grandfathers carried was not just about killing deer. It was a whole way of paying attention to the natural world, passed hand to hand across generations who could not afford to be careless. When we bought our way out of learning it, we did not just save ourselves some effort, we broke the chain. The deer are still out there, the wind still blows, the white oaks still drop their sweet acorns every other fall. The only thing missing is the men who knew how to read them. Number 3, the deer drive. Here is the trick so deadly that state after state eventually wrote laws to control it. The deer drive was the poor man's answer to a whole day of sitting, and it turned deer hunting into a family operation. A group of men and boys called drivers would spread out at one end of a woodlot or a thicket and walk slowly toward the other end, making just enough noise to move the deer ahead of them without stampeding them. At the far end sat the standers, positioned along the escape routes, the funnels and pinch points where the pushed deer were forced to cross. Deer that had bedded down and would never have moved in daylight were nudged out of their sanctuary and past the waiting guns. Done right by men who knew the land, a single drive could put deer in front of every hunter in the party. It was social, it fed whole families at once, and it worked so well that today it is heavily regulated or restricted in many places, both for the deer and for the very real danger of men shooting toward one another. It cost nothing but coordination and a knowledge of where the deer would run. Your grandfather ran drives that had been mapped by his own father, every man knowing his post by heart. Number 2, scouting the ground year-round. Your grandfather did not scout the week before season and call it good. He knew his ground in every month of the year because he lived on it or near it and walked it constantly. In late winter, he found the sheds and read where the bucks had wintered. In spring, he watched the food sources green up and found the fawning cover. In summer, he glassed the bean fields at dusk to see which bucks had made it through. By fall, he already knew where every deer bedded, fed, and traveled. So opening morning was not a guess. It was a plan built on a year of quiet attention. This is the trick that cannot be bought at any price. And it is the one modern hunters skip most, trying to replace a year of boots on the ground with a cellular camera and a weekend of preparation. There is no shortcut. The land teaches you slowly in every season, and only if you show up. Grandpa's edge was not gear. It was that he was out there all 12 months while everyone else showed up in November and wondered why the woods felt like strangers. Number 1, patience. At the top of this list is the trick that costs absolutely nothing and that almost no one can buy, sell, or fake. Your grandfather could sit. He could climb into that weathered wooden stand before first light, settle in against the cold, and stay there, unmoving and silent, until the last gray light drained out of the woods at dusk. Hours. No phone, no fidgeting, no climbing down at 10 because nothing was happening. He understood the single hardest truth of deer hunting, that the deer moves on his schedule, not yours, and that the hunter who is still in the woods and paying attention when that one buck finally steps out is the hunter who fills his tag. All the gear in the world, every camera and suit and optic and gadget in that $1,000 pile is just an attempt to shortcut the one thing that never had a shortcut. He sat, he watched, he waited. He let the woods forget he was there until he became part of them, and then the deer came. That patience was not a technique he bought. It was a discipline he built over a lifetime, and it was worth more than everything else on this list combined. Here is my challenge. Pick one of these this season. Hunt the wind, read your oaks, sit all day just once, then come back and tell me if your grandfather knew something the catalog forgot, because he did not have the gear. He had the woods, and it turns out the woods were always enough.